If it's not the unalivings that are happening left, right, and center in South Africa, it's AfriForum and its surprises. So AfriForum, through the Minister of Home Affairs, they're pushing an agenda that these Kenyans that are making illegal visas for people to go to the United States of America. Do you know what does that mean, guys? It means that high chances Donald Trump will make a drastic move about South Africans having visas and going to the United States of America. It's signaling that thing. Hey, AfriForum, guys, yes, the AfriForum. It's literally destroying this country. Allegedly, though. Allegedly, because we don't want to be sued. Allegedly, because why all of a sudden 5 Kenyans? Why is it that we haven't heard anyone from? Why is that Trump keep a statement about these people? Who is this person in the United States of America that is working with these Kenyans, that is allowing people to enter in the USA illegally with fraudulent visas? Who is that person? Are you telling me that they could not pick that up at the airport, that these visas are fraudulent? When did they realize? It's easy for one to put the face of AfriForum in all of this, because it screams AfriForum. They're in the business of ensuring that ani states need, and that your leaders are sanctioned, that the entire South Africa is sanctioned.
Good evening, folks. News 24 had a follow-up story on the detention of 7 Kenyan nationals who apparently, according to the South African government, were working for RCS, a subsidiary of Church World Services. They keep referring to Church World Services as if it was involved, but RCS is actually the activity. Regardless, this story by Duncan Alfreds has a few issues. It factually presents many issues, which I'm not going to take issue or umbrage with. He says the 7 Kenyan nationals who assisted in processing so-called Afrikaner refugees on behalf of the United States government made several visa applications to South African authorities, but were rejected each time. Now, the first problem with this story is the term refugee in quotation marks, as if it's not legitimate. At this point, these people who presumably have completed matric and gone to university ought to learn how to read the definition of refugee and also brush up on the refugee designation and the qualification for being a refugee. And the basis for this is unjust past racial persecution, religious persecution, political persecution, membership in a group, among other things, or a genuine fear of future persecution. In the case of these Afrikaners, they have a fear. But the problem is that that's not the only issue with this lie. It's not refugees, it's refugee under international standards. And these refugees meet the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980 standards for refugees, just like Ukrainians, just like Rohingya and Uyghurs and Congolese and Sudanese and Nigerians. All of these people have met the standard, as well as South Africans, because they have a past situation of racial persecution and a genuine fear of future persecution. And after the raid at a U.S. embassy function, a diplomatic activity in which they harassed and intimidated the refugee applicants and U.S. government diplomatic officials, which they lie and say they didn't, after that proves not only racial persecution, but political persecution. And this is not Afrikaners. This is another lie being perpetrated by News 24 over and over again. Simply going to the U.S. Embassy website, if you've never watched this program before, za.usembassy.gov, click on the link for the program, read the qualifications. You must be a South African, resident in South Africa. You must have suffered from unjust racial persecution in the past, or have a genuine fear of future persecution. And you must be an Afrikaner or a racial minority. It's as simple as that. It's not an Afrikaner program. They lie. Why? Because they want a racist narrative. This presumably because they must be racist. I don't know what they're pushing here for. He continued to say the last notice of adverse decision affecting the rights of a person was sent to them on 11 December. In other words, their visa was rejected. They sent it to them on 11 December 2025. Now, bear in mind that we've been told that they've arrested 7 or detained 7 Kenyans in South Africa. So where did they send this notice? To the American Embassy in South Africa, who they're doing work on behalf of for the so-called refugees, as they call them? Did they send it to the residence they're at currently? Did they send it to the place where the people who request the visa for them, which would have been the Americans or RCS? No. This letter warning them that their time was up was lodged at the South African High Commission in Nairobi, Kenya on the 30th of October. They sent the letter in October to Kenya. What did the Kenyan officials have to do with this? Nothing. Nothing at all. Do they even know where Kenyan nationals are currently residing or working in the UK, in Australia, in Somalia, in the US, Canada, South Africa? No, they don't. It's not their responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the Kenyan government to hunt down its nationals abroad who are not committing crimes. It's not their job. And the fact that they claim that they sent it to Nairobi proves that they intentionally deceived the people applying for visas and the Americans. Had they wanted them to leave without causing a scene, they would have given this letter to them in South Africa because they knew that's where they're at. And they knew exactly where they were because they went and raided the place. Now, according to News 24's information, American officials in South Africa regularly inquired about the status of the Kenyans' visa applications and that they were kept informed of their progress and subsequent problems. That seems plausible and reasonable. I won't refute that. I would expect that would be the case. So why, when it was rejected for a final time, did they send the notice to Kenya and not to the people in South Africa? Ask yourself that question. South African officials with direct knowledge of the processing of the applications say that the issues with the visas applications were clearly communicated to everyone involved from the start and that the 7 workers were never granted permission to work for Christian World Services. There's no such thing as Christian World Services. It's Church World Services. Take the time to do the research. Church World Services. Now, despite this, they continued to use a 90-day tourist visa to do paid work for a Kenyan non-governmental organization, Christian World Service. No. Christian World Service is an American company, and it's not Christian World Service, it's Church World Service. They were working for RCS, a subsidiary. Do you see the basic, simple problems that anyone with an internet could have searched for Church World Services and RCS, or simply watch my content and know the facts? But this story chooses to perpetrate fake news, disinformation, misinformation. They say Christian World Service, once again, is Church World Service, which is processing small groups of Afrikaner refugees on behalf of the U.S., small groups. And what is your basis for small groups? What do you call small groups? Is 500 and 1,000 people per day, is that a small group? 5 days a week? Is that a small group of people to you? This has been going on since August, this number of people. Even if it's just 200 per day, throughout August, 200 every day, 10 days, 2,000. That's 6,000 minimum in August. Another 6,000 in September before the government slowed down. But they continue to work. So another 6,000 minimum in November at this one location. Since August, the U.S. has been doing this in Cape Town, Joburg, and Pretoria. 3 locations. This is one location. Even if it was only 200, but we have evidence from multiple witnesses that it can be as many as 500, 800, 1,000 people sometimes showing up. I think people exaggerate. But the bottom line is I know for a fact that it's at least 200 people per day. 200 people per day, which is a reasonable number. So we're talking 18,000 refugees at one location alone, minimum. Minimum. What constitutes a small group? There are only 2.8 million Afrikaners. And since you said it's an Afrikaner program, which it's not, what is a small group? That's poppycock. They have no facts to support that whatsoever. They're basing that on the number of open source reported refugee arrivals in America. But that's not what these people are doing. They're doing that, plus they're forwarding these people on once they are approved by U.S. officials. But in the meantime, they're screening people, and they screen far more people than have departed. There are thousands of people currently approved to depart, and they're waiting. Now, they're saying that the immigration operation at the processing center's premises and an office block in Woodmead, Johannesburg on Tuesday that led to the expulsions from South Africa occurred almost a week after the Kenyans were notified that their applications had failed. Yes, they weren't notified. You notified the High Commission in Nairobi. Not these people. You said in the story, you admitted that the officials sent the letter to Nairobi. They're not in Nairobi. They don't work for the Kenyan government. If they were Kenyan government employees, then they would have gotten it. But they work for a private sector organization. The best that would have happened is that the Kenyan authorities, what's this? If they even acted on it, might have gone to RCS and said, hey, what's going on here? And then they would have reached out to them. But we don't even know that. Additionally, this is a reprehensible, well, to be fair, it's not reprehensible. At this point, News 24, I can't blame them for disclosing the location of this. I have known the location of this since the outset. I've never disclosed it, and we had a few people in chat who tried to put up, and I removed it because, not because we don't want the government of South Africa to know, because they do know where these places are. That's not a surprise. But we didn't want the media knowing and making a circus and showing up these centers. We didn't want EFF followers or malcontents causing trouble or threatening the lives or taking pictures of people. That's why we've been secretive about where this location is. But they reveal it here, and fair enough, because it's going to be all over the press now because people know where it happened. It was in Woodmead in Johannesburg. Now, according to a letter dispatched to the applicants by the South African High Commission, the Kenyan workers did not meet the requirements of Section 11, Paragraph 2 of the Immigration Act and its regulations, as there is no necessity or legal basis for the activities that the applicants intend to conduct in South Africa. There is necessity. There absolutely is necessity. In-country refugee processing must be done. These are subject matter experts with extensive experience having taken care of refugees across the continent for many years. They do have a necessity. And a legal basis depends on whether they're paid or not. If they weren't paid, they're perfectly legit being there, volunteering their time, and getting a small stipend according to South African law. But we don't know that. If the Americans can admit they were working, then the Americans got a problem. Senior South African officials told News 24 that reports about American officials being detained or that refugees, once again in quotes, were intimidated or that there was interference with the process were false. That's a lie. That's a blatant untruth, and we can prove it. We have many witnesses, some of whom will soon arrive in the States and be willing to tell their story after they arrive here, that have claimed quite the opposite. And stupid racist comments like, aha, shame, all the whiteys, look at you, running to America, and other racist comments like that. In addition, they were intimidated. The refugees were terrified. Several refugees, I had a South African organization reach out to me and say, can we talk to the refugees that you're in touch with to find out about intimidation so we can file a grievance with the South African government? Well, I said, I'll ask. And I spoke to several refugees who were at the center and on the phone last night, 3 o'clock in the morning for me, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning before I finally went to bed talking to these people. And only one person was willing to talk. A second came forward and said they would. But the rest got together as a group and said, no, we are not going to talk. Our lives are in jeopardy. This is too dangerous. We feel intimidated. We're frightened by what happened today. Until we're safely in America, we're not going to talk to anybody. We don't trust anybody except you, Colonel White. Well, it's very kind of them to say that, but that's what they said to me. So we know that that's false. In addition to that, we don't even need their testimony because today, the official government passport of a government worker on a diplomatic mission in South Africa, approved by the government of South Africa to arrive in South Africa and perform these duties, they knew what he was doing, was doxed. Now, that passport was illegally copied by South African officials and distributed to people who either agents for Home Affairs or they gave it to their friends. And black supremacist accounts across South Africa flooded the net with this person's identity, his name, his date of birth, his passport number, country of origin, and other information, jeopardizing his life, putting his life in jeopardy. This is a law-abiding citizen of the United States, a diplomat working on behalf of the United States Embassy to help refugees escape. This is clear interference with the processing of refugees. This would not be tolerated by the United Nations. This would be a case of sanctions in, say, if this happened in Uganda or it happened in Niger or in Darfur, where people are processing refugees and this level of interference takes place. And yes, they were interfered with. They tried to confiscate equipment. They took photographs and videos. They video and photographed the people who are present. They tried to find the Americans and get hands on their laptops and other material that they had. This was a raid. This was clear interference. This is a blatant lie on the behalf of whatever official told News 24 this. The fact that News 24 doesn't even question this when the basic things I've just told you are true. They're making no effort to get the facts on the ground. None whatsoever. They're simply talking to government officials and believing the bullshit they're being fed without even questioning it. That is not journalism. That is sponsorship. That is going on, getting on. That is supporting a government narrative, which makes you an operative of the government. You're not supposed to be an operative government. You're supposed to be the fourth estate holding the government to account and the public. You're not doing that. You're simply regurgitating what they told you without even asking critical questions. Not even asking. And you did interfere. While the passports of all foreigners present at the center at the time of the operation were checked, the raid was triggered by the presence of the Kenyan workers and no U.S. personnel arrested. It doesn't matter whether U.S. personnel arrested. You intimidated them. You sought to interrogate them without a basis, including diplomats with diplomatic passports who were present, and these people had to flee the scene and evacuate it. Your actions were unacceptable, as are News 24's and its demonic obsession with being the mouthpiece for the ruling party, the African National Congress. Instead of seeking out the facts, they continue to give one-sided narratives. And you can accuse me of having a one-sided narrative. Who am I interviewing from the Home Affairs? Nobody. I've only had their public statements, which are easily perforated with huge Swiss cheese size holes because of the lies they tell. No one was intimidated, really? Then why in the world are you releasing a photograph illegally taken of a U.S. diplomat and giving it to someone so they can publish it online, endangering their life? This is not no intimidation. And they are not refugees. They are refugees. And if you don't like the international definition, then go to the United Nations and lobby for it to be changed. This is not going to be tolerated much longer. Trump was calm, hasn't addressed it tonight. Frankly, South Africa is a fly or a flea on the back of the United States from his perspective. There are far bigger fish to fry. But when he gets around to cranking up the brine, well, the frog will be boiling in that pot.